Sometimes on these steep grades, your brain can play games with you, making you think something out there is crooked. That year, he made it successfully up to the water tank with power to spare. And again, time. Everybody's so busy laughing at Sylvester, they don't realize all the progress he's making.
No way!
We never have any problems.
Ya estamos subiendo en esta montaña, en la montaña de Washington, en New Hampshire. Mount Washington, en New Hampshire. Por allá vamos en el tren. Es diferente el ambiente, es interesante. Solo que no se puede grabar bien porque como le dijera yo, casi no se ve bien, pero solo se ve la gente que va atrás. Así que ahí vamos. Ahí va el tren, ahí va un tren adelante, ahí va un tren adelante.
Okay, well, you guys ready? Once we go over this bridge, I'd like everybody to look out your windows and down below on both sides.
Okay.
We're looking at the cushion of the metal, and we have reached our top speed. How about that? This is it. This is all you get today. Anybody know what our top speed is? Well, about 4 or 5 miles an hour.
How about it was 2?
What do you want, a roller coaster?
Don't seem like it.
You get that on the way down.
Okay.
Oh.
No, it's about 45 minutes to the top, and population growth, a lot of cities and towns sprung up here, a lot of industry located here. But you know, something else happened, coincidentally, and that was the discovery of tourism. Now back then, the only people that could afford to come up here as tourists were the wealthiest people in our country. Families of the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers. Many, they go hiking, and wherever they ended up at the end of the day, they'd pitch a tent, and the whole family would go camping. Now that was a pretty romantic and a novel thing to do, maybe once or twice, 3 times. But the wealthy wives ended up hating it. They didn't want any part of it. And think about it. Imagine Mrs. Rockefeller or Mrs. Carnegie laying out there in a tent in the pouring rain. That's not how these people roll. So over the next 20 some odd years, they built 33 grand hotels up here, including the Mount Washington Hotel. How many of you are familiar with the Mount Washington Hotel? You might have seen it on the way in. Looks like a big white. Originally, this was exclusively a playground for the rich and famous. Regular people couldn't afford to get near this place. So that went on for about 50 years, until the end of the Great Depression and the popularization of the automobile. And for the first time in the 1930s, a lot of regular people were driving up here. He's thinking everybody should have the opportunity to enjoy the views that he was looking at. So we hiked down, didn't say much to anybody. And about a month later, the billionaire bought up all this land, and he publicly announced that he was going to invent the world's first mountain climbing railway to the summit of. But again, Sylvester stayed the course. Took him about 10 years or so, experimenting with many, many different technologies and many failures. But like I said, he didn't quit. And one day his breakthrough came when he borrowed an idea from a bicycle, sprocket and a chain. I explained how this works at the base station. But back then he built a tabletop model and he started playing around with it, doing some calculations. And he came to the conclusion that that was the technology that was going to pull things together and make this all work. So in 1866, and that's the significance of the date on the side of your benches. That year he rolled the dice and he built the first prototype steam engine integrating the cogs and a set of tracks
Funciona
integrating
con
the rack
carbón, le echan
right up here to our
tierra.
water tank. And later that year, he made it successfully up to the water tank with power to spare. And again, that's when he convinced himself he's ready to tackle the summit.
Ahora le echa rock and roll.
Now, in the meantime, everybody's so busy laughing at Sylvester, they don't realize all the progress he's making. And one day out of the blue, he announces that he's going to hire 250 men. Now, they really thought he lost his mind, but mind you, those veterans didn't have access to any power equipment, excavators, bulldozers. This whole railway was built with sheer manpower and muscle. And it took them less than 3 years to complete the railway and the tracks, which is an engineering marvel, even by today's standards with all our modern day equipment. And on July 3rd, 1869, 155 years ago, that's the date in our history when Sylvester Marsh took his first coach of paying passengers safely up to the summit and back. So prior to that, nobody went to the summit. There was no access. After the cog railway, over the years,
We're at it.
I don't know if the ticket office told you this, but I'm going to be taking you over a trestle where the grade is almost 40%. We're going to go semi-vertical.
41%.
Now these grades can create illusions. Let's see what happens. Let's see if you have one. There's a building right here called the halfway house. And there's a picture window in the halfway house facing our right windows and into the picture window. You're going to see the reflection of our orange coach. Look how steep our coach is climbing up this mountain.
Oh yeah.
And also look at the building itself. Everybody look at the building. How many of you think that building back there was crooked? Put your hands up. Well, if you put your hands up, congratulations. You've had an illusion. That building back there is perfectly level, believe it or not.
Really?
And it's used by our track crew. So
Agrada,
now that you know the building is level, and you looked in the picture window, guess who is crooked? We are, right?
no? We are.
But sometimes on these steep grades, your brain can play games with you, making you think something out there is crooked instead of you.
Like the trees.
So if you put your hands up, congratulations, you had an illusion. And there's no right or wrong answer, by the way. But I will tell you, those of us who work here, we experience that same situation once in a while.
We're so high up in the trees and stuff. Alpine region. Alpine region. No trees up top. Oh, very, very few trees, sparse. It's so high up. 6,288 feet. Christmas trees. That's all you got to see.
This is an elevated trestle. And the grade out here is 37.41%. 37.41%. Now hold that thought for a minute. I don't want you to miss the views off the right. That's the top of the Amanusic Ravine I mentioned. And you can the hut is Lakes of the Clouds. To the right, you're looking at the southern presidential mountains. Mount Monroe, Mount Eisenhower, Mount Franklin, and Mount Pierce. Now let's come back to this 37.41% grade. Do you all realize how steep a grade you're climbing up right now? Much, because you're in these crooked benches which buffer the effects of the grade. 14 feet lower back there. Now if that's not convincing enough, we're going to do a little exercise. And let me first illustrate this for you. Don't try this until I illustrate it. Now while you're all trying to stand up straight, you might have noticed all of our trees are getting shorter and shorter the higher and higher feet. All of our trees are going to disappear because they can't tolerate the world's worst weather up here. Now let me tell you why we have the world's worst weather. First of all, Mount Washington is the highest peak in the northeastern part of our country. But there's a lot of other stuff going on around that. It also happens to be perfectly situated directly in the path where every weather system in our country travels.